Like many people, I am a big music fan. And some of my favorite bands growing up would be like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, a little bit of Nirvana. And once I started really getting into those bands, I started looking at the bands that influenced them, which led me to Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and Muddy Waters and others like that. When you start looking at the history of rock and roll music, well, there's probably going to be one common denominator as far as someone who was a big influence on rock music and really changed the game, and that is, of course, the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley. Right now, I am in Tupelo, Mississippi, and today we're going to be looking at the birthplace of Elvis Presley. All right, now, like I said, we are in Tupelo, Mississippi at the birthplace of Elvis Presley. And they have a whole bunch of stuff here in addition to the house that Elvis was born in. There's a museum here. Now, there's no photography or videography allowed in the museum, and I asked about it when I went in, and they said, they kindly asked me not to do any filming in there. So I'm going to respect that. But first off, we're going to check out the house where Elvis was born. I've had the opportunity to travel to several different places and have seen quite a few murals around the world, and dadgum, this might be one of the nicest murals I've ever seen. This is incredibly well done. And since we can't film inside the museum, which has some amazing artifacts, by the way, I just got out of there, we're going to use this to maybe kind of give a short overview about Elvis. Now, for all of you hardcore Elvis fanatics, this isn't going to be like a full-on documentary. We're just kind of showing what's here. But Elvis Presley, as we have already established, was born here in Tupelo, Mississippi. He was born in 1935, January 8th, 1935, to be exact. So right in the middle of the Great Depression. And I'll tell you what, you want to talk about poverty. Tupelo, Mississippi, during the Great Depression, you're talking about as poor as it gets. So Elvis's parents, his dad's name was Vernon Elvis Presley, and his mom's name was Gladys. They met in 1933. She was 21, and he was 17. They had a whirlwind romance that lasted less than 2 months, and then they went off and eloped and got married on June 17th of 1933, and were so poor that they had to borrow $3 for the marriage license. Well, their son Elvis would come along January 8th of 1935. Some people may not know, Elvis had a twin brother who was stillborn. So he was born at 4 a.m., and then Elvis was born at 4:30. His brother's name was Jesse. But anyway, here on this mural, well, it kind of walks us through some of Elvis's early life. We can see some childhood images of him, and we can also see some influences on Elvis, including old Muddy Waters there. And then we progress on to where Elvis is going to pick up the guitar. As a matter of fact, he's going to learn to play the guitar at church. There's going to be an individual at the First Assembly of God Church that a guy by the name of Frank something, if I remember right, Frank Smith, who is going to teach him guitar chords. Okay, so this is going to kind of be Elvis's introduction into music. His mother always, listened to records and things like that. And then in 1948, they are going to have to move to Memphis. And then, well, as we progress on here, we see the career of Elvis beginning to unfold until, of course, he is going to reach superstardom. But it's all going to start at his birthplace here in Tupelo, Mississippi. Well, right here, we are looking at the birthplace of the king, Elvis Presley. And we've had a little bit of a rain situation develop here. As a matter of fact, it opened up and was just there were just buckets of water falling out of the sky here a minute ago, and I had to take refuge on Elvis's porch. But anyway, this is the home where Elvis Presley was born, January 8th of 1935. Okay, so 1935, as I've already mentioned, this is at the height of the Great Depression, and you can see we have a pretty small, humble home here. Like, this is the size of some people's sheds or maybe their garage, and it's in this home where a man who is going to just dominate the music industry and become really one of the most famous people in history is going to be born. All right, we're gonna pop inside and take a look at the inside of Elvis Presley's birthplace. All right, so we just got into the home that was the birthplace of Elvis Presley. This is a 400 square foot home. It's called a shotgun home, so it was really, really small, and doesn't have any hallways. And I've seen that, you know, the reason they were called shotgun homes is because you could shoot in the front door and it would go out the back door in one shot. But anyway, or it could also be because of the shape of the home. Kind of looks like a shotgun shell. I've heard that too. But anyway, this is the room where Elvis and his twin brother were born. This home was built right here on this site by Elvis's dad and his brother and his grandfather. They had to borrow $180 for the materials to build this, and you can see it's pretty Spartan. And then if we go back into the next room, well, this is the kitchen and dining room, the icebox that you see back here. Some of the materials in here have been added over the years to kind of immerse you in the experience, but the icebox is an original from the Presley family. But definitely some humble beginnings for the king of rock and roll here in Tupelo. All right, we've popped back outside, and looks like we still have our rain situation going on here. But just a little bit more about this house. So in 1938, when Elvis was 3 years old, well, his dad ended up going to prison for forging a check and received a 3-year sentence. He only had to serve, I think, like 8 or 9 months of that sentence. But anyway, during that time, the Presleys lost their house. His mom had to go to work in a laundry, and then they would go and visit his dad, Vernon, at the Parchman Prison is where he was located. A 5-hour drive by Greyhound bus to go and visit his dad. But anyway, in 1957, so this is after Elvis has, started his music career. Well, he came back to do a concert at the Mississippi-Alabama Fair, and he wanted to go back to where he was born. Noticed that the house was still here. This 2-room birthplace was still unoccupied. was pretty much unchanged. It was kind of in poor repair. So Elvis ended up donating a lot of the money from the proceeds of his concert to kind of help out with the community where he was born. Part of that included preserving the home. So locals scrubbed and painted and got things back in working order here, and then it was going to end up becoming an attraction. But anyway, Elvis never forgot where he started off, and did a lot to help contribute to the revitalization of East Tupelo. After you leave the birthplace of Elvis Presley, well, here at this park, well, they have a little bit of a walk that takes you through the life of Elvis. So this is a sculpture of Elvis at 13 years of age, where we start looking at some of his early musical influences. Oh boy, this rain is starting to pick up again. So we're going to try and make this fairly quick. Now, Elvis, his musical style is going to be heavily influenced by the blues. There's going to be a lot of African American artists that are going to have a big impact on him. His mother, like I said earlier, listened to a lot of music in the home that he was exposed to. He's also going to have a lot of country influences. But another musical style that's going to have a huge impact and feed into this blend that becomes Elvis's unique style is going to be gospel. Okay, so Elvis loved gospel music, and what we are looking at is the church that the Presley family attended. Okay, this is an Assembly of God church, First Assembly of God. Now, the original structure was about a block away from here, and they, long story short, were wanting to have a larger building, so this was... the old church was moved across the street and turned into a residence, made room for a larger church, and then they ended up moving this structure here. It says on the sign here in 2008, moved it to this site and then restored it to its original condition. So Elvis has a very early, Christian upbringing. He's gonna get a little wild later on in life. But it was here in this church where a lot of his musical influence is going to be laid out and form the foundation for his later sound. And it's also in this church, as I mentioned earlier, where a church member is going to teach him how to play the guitar. Yeah, so that's really cool. We've now moved up to a high point here at the park, and again, Elvis donated a lot of money so that the poor people over here on the east side of Tupelo could have this open space where kids could play, and where they could maybe have some of the same opportunities as kids in more affluent areas of town. And on a sign here close by, it says that when Elvis would return to Tupelo, he liked to come up here and just kind of spend a little bit of time and reflect. So it's quite appropriate that they have a memorial here, or this sculpture that is called Becoming. So here it shows a young Elvis with his first guitar, and then showing behind what he would become, this legendary figure with arms outstretched and looking to heaven, so kind of symbolizing the end of his life as well. And then back here behind, now keep in mind, this is a show and tell video. This isn't a full-on Elvis documentary. As I've been walking around, I keep thinking, my gosh, I hope that Eric Dorr doesn't watch this. Eric is a big Elvis aficionado and used to have a huge Elvis collection, so he's probably going to see my treatment of this and just roll his eyes. But anyway, here it talks about Elvis at age 11 and a gift that he received as a young man, a $7.75 acoustic guitar. Here it says that on January 8th of 1946, Elvis's mother Gladys took him to the Tupelo hardware to buy a present for his 11th birthday. And Elvis was thinking that he would like a .22 caliber rifle or a bicycle, both of which Gladys thought would be a little bit too dangerous. I can identify with Elvis here. I think 11-year-old redneck JD would have been going for the .22 caliber rifle as well. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, I was 10 or 11 years old when I bought my first .22. But anyway, that's beside the point. So anyway, she persuaded him to get the guitar, which it says here was his really only choice, and that is going to change this young man's life. So he's going to have the influence of the people in the church. He's going to have the influence of the radio, and then throughout his young life is going to become an entertainer. Okay, so once he moves to Memphis, is going to start recording at Sun Records, and is going to become one of the most famous musicians of all time. And then here it has a few stats here for us. So had 18 number 1 hits, 38 top 10 hits, 85 top 30 hits, and 80 weeks in the number 1 spot. And did a lot of good in his life as well. So gave a lot of money to help out. He's a tragic figure, so he's not without his problems, obviously. Also gave money to help build the Pearl Harbor Memorial. So did a lot of good in his life, in spite of some of the problems that came with fame. But anyway, right here, we can see a picture of how in America anything is possible, where Elvis doesn't adopt a victim mentality, but instead uses his talent and resources and rises up from nothing to become one of the most famous and successful musicians of all time. All right, well, there you go. This was kind of an unplanned stop for me, but I'm so glad that I came here today. If you were a fan of Elvis, or really just rock music or music in general, definitely need to come here if you were ever traveling through this part of Mississippi. Like I said, there's a museum inside that I couldn't film at that has all kinds of really cool artifacts to take a look at. But yeah, we know Elvis, from the movies and the music and all of the glitz and the glamour and the fame. So it's pretty cool to come here and see his humble beginnings right here in this shotgun house in Tupelo, Mississippi.